Hi, it's Marisol, your rebel guide to living a life of freedom abroad, bringing you an episode of Roaming the Now, where entrepreneurs, coaches, and mentors come together to give you a behind the scenes look at the real and raw experience of setting out to a new country and building a life and business abroad. Make sure to like and subscribe to Roaming the Now. Enjoy! Good morning. Yeah, it's morning for me. Maybe it's night for you wherever you are in the world. This is your host, Marisol, bringing you an episode of Roaming the Now. Today I have Amayra Morales, who is joining us from Peru. And we're going to be discussing today reconnecting to your roots. I'm really excited to dive into this conversation because through our previous conversations, it really sounds like both me and Amayra have moved back to like the homeland of the ancestors. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation. But before we do, I'm going to go ahead and let Amayra introduce yourself, tell the audience about you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marisol. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and connecting with your audience. As you mentioned, my name is Amayra. I am an Ayurveda health coach, a yoga teacher, and I am based in the beautiful Sacred Valley of Cusco, Peru.
Awesome. And I know though originally you mentioned you're not from like you didn't grow up in Peru. Where did you grow up?
So I was born here in Peru, and at the age of 8, when terrorism broke out, sort of kind of like the late 80s, 90s, my family and I decided that, well, my parents decided that the future of Peru, looked a little bit uncertain. So we migrated to Sydney, Australia. So you can just imagine such a contrast of like Andes, cold mountains, and then boom, we landed in like the northern beaches of Sydney, and it was such a contrast. And me myself, I hadn't been to a beach my whole life, so that was really, really interesting. So it was like a whole new culture, a new language, and just a different way of being, no? And the Peruvian way, which I'm very sure it's like the Mexican way, people are partying and there's like night markets and there's just always stuff happening, no? So we got to Australia and there was like nothing happening on the streets, no people were out, there was no markets, and we were like, what kind of place is this? So very, very interesting. So growing up in Australia was amazing. No, I'm super, super grateful. Yeah.
Yeah. How long? So you moved to Australia when you were around 8, 9, right? And then how long did you spend in Sydney? Or Australia, my bad. I don't know why I said Sydney specifically.
Yeah. So we didn't leave the country up until when I was 18, really. That was my first trip back to Peru with my parents, no? So I kind of finished high school, and while my parents, my friends at high school were going like, clubbing and dancing and doing the end of school thing, here I was in Peru, and then every other year, maybe I would come back maybe like 2 or 3 times, and then, yeah, eventually until I came here in 2019, and I've been here since.
Yes. So I'd love to hear more about that experience of like what was the pull to go back to Peru for maybe like an undefined amount of time.
Yeah, so I decided that I had this kind of certain urge to reconnect to my roots now, because even though I came back every 2 3 years, it was for a very short amount of time, max maybe like 3 weeks now, because in Australia you only have 4 weeks of annual leave a year now. So I would accumulate all of those and then maybe come to Peru for as long as I could. No, while I did get a taste of Peru and my culture and my roots, I didn't feel like that was enough. No, so 2019 came around and my mum decided that she wanted to come and visit her parents as well. So I was like, I'll come along. So I quit my life in Sydney, not with that intention, but I had an open ticket. I had a one way, and my plan was to go after Peru, go to Ecuador, Colombia, Central America, and then back to Australia. No, but I felt this deep connection to Peru, and especially the Sacred Valley where my mother is from. And I thought maybe I'll stay another month. I'll stay another month. And then March 2020 came around. The obvious happened. The whole world shut down, and there was no way I was going back to Australia. No, so, and I had no desire to go back to Australia. No, I knew that what was happening there and what my friends were going through, and I think I had it pretty good here. So while that particular period of people's lives was very difficult, for me, I was super grateful, no, because I learned how to be by myself. I learned how to do things on my own, even though, there was a certain kind of, different mood happening, no, but I really value that time, that particular time.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. When I think back to March of 2020, I remember I think the first month I kind of fell into that like collective funk. And then after that, I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to go see my friends and I'm going to still have human connection and hang out with my yoga buds and like do yoga and do all the kind of like things we weren't supposed to do.
Yeah,
And I did, yeah, when I reflect back on that year, there was a lot actually that happened with that kind of, the world was on pause, but it kind of felt like my internal world was actually growing in ways that like probably would not have been able to happen if I was like the world was not on pause. Yeah.
100%. A lot of my growth happened around that time for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Last night I was looking at a photo of me, and I think it was when I finally kind of like I finally had someone who was an energy healer tell me like basically they did this like kind of combination of like hands-on Reiki with like crystal work and just very kind of hybrid modality, right? And they were my friend. And they had asked me very clearly, did you see any colors while I was doing this like energy work on you? And I was like, yeah, I saw this, this, and this. And she was like, oh, okay. Well, all of those stones and the things I was putting you, I was putting around like, your third eye, like all of those chakras. And she's like, I think you're an energy healer. And I was like, what? Because at that point, that concept, all of that just seemed so like foreign to me. And that
Mm.
actually, yeah, that happened in 2020. So it was a awakening, I think, to the who I've always been, but it was kind of more having it like in my face. But there's a photo that she sends to me every once in a while, and she's like, "Think about how much you've grown," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness."
Totally. And I think that is like such a great point to bring up, the growth that has happened since that time, no? Because the stuff that I do now, the roots of it was that time, no? Because it was like connecting with yourself and yeah, all these rituals and practices that I do now was because of that particular period.
Same here. You just reminded me of that. I like that. Yeah, that is true. A lot of the practices and even I think things that I do now that wouldn't have been able to begin without having that period of time of just like pause in the world, introspection, reconnection, reconnecting to honestly, the more I have been in Mexico and really understood like culture and cultural roots, like connecting to those rituals. So I would love to hear from you, like from your own inner experience and being like in the land of your ancestors. Like, how has that been for you, like on an inner journey? Like, what has really shifted for you?
Yeah, I think, growing up in Australia, there was a certain period of time that I rejected my culture, not because obviously I look very different. I'm not your Australian, like typical looking, but even though I resonate very much with Australian, whenever I would travel overseas, I would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm Australian." People were like, "Oh, but like, yeah, you meant to be blonde and blue eyes or whatever." No, and Australia is so kind of multicultural, no. But for a period of time, I was really like I was bullied and I was teased, and I rejected a lot of my Peruvian culture. So it was like kind of I was dancing between two worlds, like I was like at school with my Aussie friends trying to be as Aussie as possible. And then at home, they would be like, no, like you're eating Peruvian food and you're following these customs and you're celebrating these things. So I danced between both of them. No, so for me, like coming back here and not having any distractions and just being kind of myself, no, and learning. And I think one of the biggest lessons of all this reconnecting with my roots was understanding obviously my culture, my customs, the traditions here, my ancestors and stuff, was also coming here to be the bridge for my parents, no? Because when they left Peru, it was a really difficult times. I'm pretty sure like they didn't want to leave Peru, no? They had to leave because of, all the violence and everything that was happening, no? So their values are very different to my values, no? So they grew up and they value security and safety and kind of stability, no? And then I grew up in this whole different world in Australia where when I left the corporate world, it was one of the most challenging conversations that I had to have to them, because it was like, I'm leaving the corporate world. I have no idea what's going on with my life. I am like absolutely just surrendering. And they were like, pero por qué? La, no? So they valued very different things. Whereas for me, it's like, I need to discover my purpose here. I know that my purpose is not sitting in like a corporate boardroom and doing stuff that I'm not passionate about, no? And they were like, but what do you mean? Like, how are you going to like have an income? And, what about your career? And you work so hard for this. And I'm like, but this particular world is killing me, So very different points of view of what we value, but at the end of the day, you kind of have to break those energy cords with them. And I had to go out and discover my purpose, my dharma, what they say, in Sanskrit. And I never imagined in my life that I would be here right now. But India for me was also the catalyst. No? So India led me to different parts of the world, like healing communities, and then I had to end up back here to kind of reconnect with my roots, connect with my ancestors, and understand them and their childhood and why they are that they, the reason that why they are today. So understanding of that, it kind of brought out this compassionate side of me as well, because they didn't have the easiest childhood. So how can I expect them to be these loving, nurturing kind of parents if they didn't have that themselves? And once that kind of clicked with me, I was like, wow, I had just been so kind of harsh with them, So it really was a very healing path for me being here.
Yeah. A lot of what you're saying is landing with me because that's honestly how I feel as well. Being able to understand my father more.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and it's kind of been interesting. Like through me reconnecting with my roots, it's also been like him reconnecting with his roots. Like I needed his birth certificate and I needed like him to be here. So my dad at 66 years old for the first time in his life, like saw where he was actually like born.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was like a big moment for me to just see how much he was processing around like, wow, like this is like what like he said to me, he was like, what were my parents doing here? Why were we here? And it just got him questioning, but I could see that it gave him a sense of like, oh, this is where I was born, like this is where I came from before going to the US, right? Because he went to the US when he was around like 3 months old. And then I also think like at least in like Mexico, there's a lot of hidden family secrets, right? Um I don't yeah, Latin culture. There's just so many secrets. And I think through being here, I've been able to learn a lot about like, well, what is the actual truth around like why my grandparents went to the US? How did they go to the US? Like what's the real truth behind that? And it's very different than from what was kind of like recounted to us by them. And just seeing kind of the, I'll just say like the ancestral trauma that's like so wrapped up in all of like my father's like side of the family. I've just kind of realized like, oh, I really am doing my best. Let me have a lot of compassion for myself as well as like where I came from because like the conditions that they grew up in, what they were struggling with like as adults is so different, right? And it's just been a very I would say eye-opening experience as well as a lot of gratitude for
Totally.
like, yeah, for basically all my ancestors went through all they went through so that like I could be here, right? And living this life of passion and purpose and really feeling like full of loving the things that I do.
Yeah, and that resonates so much with me, the family secrets and where you later find out they're like, "Wow, I've only heard like 20% of that story," and you've kind of manipulated it a little bit along the way. So learning about it is like, "Wow, I understand." And maybe, in a way they were protecting you from whatever, eventually what you may find out or whatever the reason was, no? But yeah, I resonate that so deeply.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like to unwind it, right? Because all of the history is in one country and then when you're moved right to another country or just like me like I've always known like all my ancestry traces back here but no one really would tell me the truth and so I was kind of like well I don't know like I don't know and it was really hard for me to accept like right like my difficult upbringing like why did my like father parent the way he parented my dad was a very hands-off parent um I would say a little too hands-off. in my personal opinion. Whenever I've asked my dad for guidance, it's always been like, well, like, what do you want to do? But I have now recognized that that comes from the fact that my father's parents were very rigid of like, you do this and you do that. And he didn't actually pursue what he wanted. And then now I see with his children, he's very like, well, do what you want to do because I don't want you to be mad at me in the future. And I'm like, oh, so interesting.
Mm.
You know, it's interesting how, but to understand the whole context of that and to see how it like, how, the interesting ways of parenting in our lineage get passed down and how they kind of transform and like transmute when people have their children has been interesting for me to kind of just like observe and understand a lot more with compassion.
Yeah, but then I guess the question you might ask yourself as well is like, what kind of parent will I be? If that's the road that you decide to go down as well, like, would I be super lenient? Would I be more strict? Would I be, so it's like a super interesting topic to even dive into, like, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think ancestrally and knowing that, like, since we're talking about reconnecting to roots, um, I have thought about this question often, because my mom died when I was really young. I was around 8 or 9, and so my dad raised me, but my dad raised me from his lens, and, the more I've gotten older and understood it, like, my dad wasn't expecting to be a single dad, and he didn't really know how to handle it, and understanding his family and where he came from, like, his parents were working. They weren't at home to raise him, like, it's an immigrant family, like, everyone worked until they went to school, you know? Um, and so when I think about me as a parent and I kind of have those remnants of like my mom and how she parented, I'm very much so like, how can I find this like balance of being in the middle? I don't want to be too lenient and I don't want to be too strict, but I do understand how, when we're growing up and discovering in the world, to have someone to hold us in that safety and stability is really, really important. But emotionally, I think definitely as a parent, I'm going to focus more on the emotional nurturance of a child, because I did, as I say to everyone, when I was growing up, the stability that I had was more like monetary. It wasn't actually emotional or any of the things that I feel like you really need to like self actualize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally resonate with that now. And now, if I look back at my childhood, and it was very much about that. No, you've got your education is such a huge component of their thinking, no? But I can't possibly imagine going to my dad saying, at the age of I don't know 10, like, oh, this is how I'm like, just open up to him. I think he would have been like, whoa, like I don't even know how to. And I was a very sensitive child, no? And a lot of it I had to internalize because I realized that I wasn't getting anywhere with them, no? So, yeah, and I can't imagine him going to his parents and saying, "Hey, like I'm going through this like self-discovery phase and I don't know what I." They would just be like, "Go back there, go back to work," kind of thing, no? So, yeah, this questioning of parenting is yeah, super interesting, no? You
It
don't want to be
is.
you don't want to be too, tough with them as well, no? But to have the emotional and yeah, that emotional support, no?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I resonate with that exactly. Like, because I do remember being really sensitive and, just things. And I would try to have those talks with my father. And I remember him being like uncomfortable. But now that as an adult, I reflect back, I'm like, well, like, obviously, like, if my dad were to try to go to talk to his parents, similar things of like, this is how I'm feeling and I'm having a hard time and I'm feeling abandoned, they probably would have been like, what are you saying? Get back to work and just like, brush it off. And so I think when you're able to really understand the nuances, right, of your lineage and how everyone was raised, it just, for me, it really has brought a big sense of just compassion for my experience, which I think leads to that acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah, and the conversations that I have now with my parents, like I wouldn't have imagined having these type of conversations with them had I not been on this healing path, no? Like to open up and even like I remember telling my dad like I love you. And then it was like crickets, no? And I kind of wanted, like, expected him to say, "Oh no, I love you too," but it never, and it hasn't come back ever, no? But I've accepted that that's just not the way that he expresses himself. But my mum and I are like, "Oh, I love you, I love you." We're just like love, no? So a part of me is like, "Oh God, I would love and I love you back
Hmm.
eventually." Okay, but it's not within him, and I have surrendered to the fact that that's just him, no?
Yeah, that's so interesting because I remember growing up and my dad didn't tell me he loved me all the time. Like he only told me it he like his way of using it, like he said, "Well, if I told you I loved you all the time, it wouldn't have that much meaning as it would, you know, like when I then like with the times I do say it, and I just didn't understand that as a child." But I mean, obviously now reflecting on him, like I have kind of gotten to a place where, I want him to know like, hey, I do love you, like when we sign up on calls, but I'm not really expecting to receive it. But I also really do kind of understand, like, he didn't grow up all the time with his parents, like telling him he loves him. It's just a very, very different way of being, right? And I think that through my, I guess we could say, courage to go back to Mexico, really start to understand like the family lineage and all the things and share that with him. Like it has kind of been my gift of healing for him. Because when I heal, I know that he is healing by just me sharing those stories. And I think that that's really powerful. And I've gotten to a point where I respect my dad, like, as in terms of he's on his journey, but definitely I'm gonna share what I'm going through because, like, I come from my father, and where I am is where his roots are, and he didn't really have that experience. But it kinda always throws me off when my dad will ask me for, like, insight on what he's going through in his, like, personal awareness journey, because that's how my father is now. And it always just throws me off because I'm like, "But wait, like, aren't you the, like, parent?" Right, so
Isn't
this
it amazing how it comes around? No, like I never expected myself to be in this situation where I'm giving advice to my mum and I'm parenting her. And she came to Peru in August, like July, August this year, no, and I hadn't seen her for 4 years, no, because since the country shut
Mhm.
down, whatever, no. And it was so beautiful to spend this time with her and to actually like take her to one of the apples, the mountains, and do an offering to Pachamama. Like she had never done that in her whole life, no, having grown up in Peru, no. So for me, I feel like this kind of bridge for her specifically, no. And I would tell her, no, like you grab a coca leaf and you kind of do a quinto, what we say here in Peru, no. You speak your word, your truth, and you give it to Pachamama, no, and then she kind of takes care of it, no. So all these customs, all these traditions, no, she was part of a women's circle. I would have never expected her to have like a drum and just like be like even have the courage to do it. She's so shy and introverted, no. So this trip for her and I was a really like a beautiful time to reconnect and for me to say, "Come on, let me take you on this journey of all these things that you have never experienced." And she would always be like, "Oh, but I've never done this before and it's so new." And she was so amazed at, the spiritual community here in the Sacred Valley, no, because we would go to like well, there is ecstatic dance. She never got to go, but I was telling her like we go to ecstatic dance, we do cacao ceremonies, we do tamascals, we do women's circles, there's ayahuasca ceremonies. And she was like to her, her brain would have been like, why do you want to cry with this medicine? Why do you want to purge? Like to her, like she wasn't understanding it, no. But I was telling her, and I'm pretty sure she's noticed the difference of the woman that left Sydney 2019 and the one that is now. There's like no comparison, no. So to her, all these kind of healing modalities started like intriguing her, no, even to the extent of like, I don't know, maybe I might do a truma one day, San Pedro, I don't know, no? And I was like, what about ayahuasca? And she's like, I know, Dios mío, no, no, like that's too much, no? Maybe I could talk her into it, sneak in a glass there one night. But yeah, so it's interesting how like I've been the bridge for her in particular, no?
Yeah, I love that, and very similar experience of, like, my father did his first temazcal, like, with me, my dad does have curiosity actually around San Pedro. I actually have a lot of San Pedro plants around my house because it's the grand protector. A
Wow.
lot of a lot of people only know it for the mescaline, but actually it's a very powerful plant in terms of energetic protection, and, it's so interesting. So my partner has had this, like, there was the grandfather San Pedro, and it was massive. Like I would say, like 10 feet tall. But a gusano got inside and started to like eat it. So we had to start. You have to cut it, or else it's completely going to die. Because basically, like there are not, I believe, where that in the region where your plant grows. Um, San Pedro, there's not gusanos like in the regions here in like Mexico. Like it's very different, right, climate wise and everything. But what we've done is actually like repotted. We call him Mr. Petey. We've repotted him, and so we have him obviously here at the house in the various spaces. But when we went to Michoacan, that was actually a project of my partner's in the past, and Mr. Petey was there. So you had seen that there were parts of Mr. Petey like hacked off, like people probably had come and, because the land hasn't, it's been kind of vacant for a while. You could see that people had just hacked Mr. Petey, but in the center you saw one new growth. And then on the side you saw like other two growths. And I think that it really is just like for me, a reminder of just really how strong like San Pedro is, like just energetically, like what it really represents, spiritually, energetically. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And do you guys get those beautiful white flowers on them?
So on the San Pedros that I have, no, they just have the really beautiful like blue teal color, but the peyote that we have, yes, they do. It's been
Oh,
really fun to watch them blossom.
yeah, because the San Pedro's here, like I've seen with this beautiful like white flower, and I'm like, it's not common that you see it, but it's yeah, it's huge. It's like a sunflower kind of thing. And I'm like, every time I walk past one near my house when I go walking, and I'm like, oh, she's not there yet. No, but every now and then she might just like come out, no? It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, if you actually do see that, can you send me a picture? I would love to
Yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would love to see you, but yeah, I think that, as we're both sharing, it's interesting, right, to introduce your parents to experiences that are their culture that they would have not experienced unless you were the one to take the foot forward and be that bridge, as you were saying.
Yeah, and even like plant medicine aside, even to sit in circle as women, like that is so healing, no? And when I saw my mum there, I was like, wow, I never like you had told me when I was in the corporate world in Sydney, like, working in the city, that one day I might be sitting in with my mum in a women's circle and, sharing, and I would just be like, first of all, that is so woo woo. I don't think I could ever do it now. But to have her and be part of it, and her like realizing that all these people are here to heal now, and I mean, even though she said to me like I couldn't understand why you would want to like put like combo on you and purge and do all these things, like what's the whole point of it? And I said the whole point is to heal. And there's like, well, what have you got to heal from? And I'm like, wow, you live in this world where you think that the childhood was perfect and everything was fine, no, but there's still stuff stuck within us, and it's not just a childhood, it's whatever else we're dragging from our ancestors, no? So I think that kind of opened her up to a lot of things, no? And she opened up about things in her childhood that I'm like, wow, you're gonna need a few ayahuasca ceremonies for that to heal that stuff, no? So yeah, super interesting that when you're not in this healing world, you're like, well, what have I got to heal from? Like I'm good, I'm going to work, I'm going out on the weekends, everything's fine, no? But all that internal turmoil that's happening, kind of plant medicine just brings it out.
Yeah, the repression, right? And I said this recently, but I remember growing up, there was a book of my mom's in her like room, and it said, "Feelings buried alive never die." And I
Mm.
remember this book spine so vividly, I think because it was like pink and had like nature on it, but it said feelings buried alive never die. And I was like, whoa. And for me, like having journeyed with plant medicine and, it's interesting. I've never tried combo, but I'm actually like, I'm part of a group that's like organizing for the right time to do it. I'm really looking forward to it because I do really believe that, there are feelings inside of us staying in the body, and they're like within the cells, like those things. And so it's about purging them. And it was so interesting. I have a friend who who was explaining to me how she had her like caca therapy in terms of like, going to the bathroom is therapy. Even if you're experiencing like diarrhea or it's like super intense, like those are certain therapies because actually like the colon and that whole area, like I remember just like from my experience when I understood around it, like can carry so much heavy emotions. And when you're actually like not going to the bathroom on a regular basis, like that's like stuck shit literally inside of you. And it's not only like physical, it's also emotional. And so like really when we can lean into like, yes, these plant medicines can make us feel really like, whoa, but what it's doing is it's cleansing and it's purging those things that the body really doesn't need to be carrying anymore. I think when we lean into that energetic process, trusting that we can trust the medicine to guide us what we're ready to let go of in these sessions.
Totally. And so I turned 40 this year, and I'm not like hey, let's have a party, let's celebrate me. That's not my style. And I, no disrespect to people who kind of do that, But for me, it was like, I need to go internal. No? So my first thought was going to the jungle to do a few ayahuasca ceremonies. And then that didn't work out. And then I ended up doing this beautiful, like, Wachuma ceremony with a maestro just privately, And I could feel, and I could just, I sounded like, I'm not in pain, but my liver is, I'm feeling something. And he's like, you probably need kambo, no? So I understand the purification and who knows what I've got going on in the liver. Now, even though, like you're saying, look, I eat really healthy and I move every day, I'm doing all these things, but all that emotional stuff, like you're saying, gets built up around the body, and for me, I feel like my liver has always been an issue, because I had hepatitis when I was a toddler, and the doctor told my mum, like, her liver would always be compromised, moving forward. So I feel like, there's certain medicines that just bring out and release so much, So yeah, Kumbo has been calling me, and I used to be like not into Kumbo at all. Like I was like, oh, but they treat the frogs like this or whatever. No, but slowly, like I'm hearing more things about it. So yeah, it's something that I'm definitely planning to do in the future for sure. No, and so it's interesting that you say this, because something that I specialize in now is helping women with digestive issues. So I'm like, eventually, I had to end up here somehow. So yeah, super interesting.
Well, I actually think that's a really good note of, if you want to like take some time to talk about the work that you do with women, and just the work that you're doing in Peru, and as well as share like if anyone is interested in that, like how to get in contact with you. I feel like this is a perfect time.
Yeah, so Ayurveda is the sister science of yoga. So I'm sure you guys, your audience, have all heard about yoga. So Ayurveda looks at like kind of the nutrition side of it, the spirituality, the connection with the body. So I mainly help professional women really heal their digestive issues to have this kind of outer glow, because we all know that the skin and the gut is connected. So that's something that I'm super passionate about. And I love helping women with this, because I know that they go to dermatologists and they do all these creams and they do all these things and nothing works. But the reality is that the root of everything in Ayurveda is the gut. So this is something that I love working with women on. And yeah, just doing everything naturally. I get women to do their own creams and lotions and potions, as opposed to relying on all these creams and stuff that have so many toxins in it. So that's kind of my jam, and yeah, something that I'm really passionate helping women with.
Love it. And I actually am going to say something really interesting. When I was living in the US and like in a more, I would say, materially focused stage of my journey, I used to buy like super duper expensive creams with like all these chemicals in this. And now I go to, it's called El Herbario. It's a store in town. And I use like, when my skin is super dry, they make this like cacao like cleanser. And I
Mm-hmm.
use that. Even will use it on my body and it works amazing. And then I needed to like exfoliate and like balance my skin, and it's all natural. Like most of the stuff I use now on my face is natural. I try to be as natural as possible, because there really is so many chemicals and toxins that mess with your like hormonal system in all those expensive creams. Like even if they do work, right? They're not really good for you. And it also makes me think how, like, before I left the US, I like got Botox, and I'm like not like I'm not I am not anywhere like near, I feel like, needing it. But that was just kind of what was happening, right? Influencing me. And now when I reflect on it, I'm like, do I need Botox? No, I just need more temescals. Purified. Purified.
And it's so interesting. So here, women are very similar. No, they make their own creams, the oils or whatever. No, and the other day I was in a cafe, and I saw for the first time in a long time this woman with fillers. No, she wasn't a local woman; she was a foreigner, and I just couldn't stop staring at her. I was like, "Wow!" It's because I haven't seen that for a while. Now, if I lived in Bondi Beach, Sydney, I see that all the time, and it would. But to me, it was like, "Wow!" Like it was a like, wow, I'm back into like the matrix kind of almost, no? But here, yeah, and I was reading a study the other day of the umbilical cords of kids now. They found something like 220 toxins and chemicals in the umbilical cord, and we're talking through like cleaning products, environmental, food, water, like what women put on their skin. And that to me was just like,
Boom.
crazy, no? Because I mean, your mother and my mother, I'm pretty sure grew up where they used like herbs to shampoo their hair and natural stuff for their skin, no? So constantly we are being exposed to so many toxins. And to me, it doesn't make sense not to have this beautiful cleansing diet and have these like beautiful rituals and stuff. And then I'm just going to dump some Nivea cream on my face. Like that doesn't, that my brain just can't compute that. No. So yeah, this is something that I love to help women with. And, I'm just like, you can just make your own oil cleanser. You don't need those harsh soaps. And I know you love to have that squeaky feeling, but that's actually stripping all the oils off your face and stuff. So, yeah, if you know how to cook, you can definitely make your own skincare products.
Yes, 100%, and I would agree with that, and even just if you can really actually do your best to find organic, like, truly natural products, um, they could support I support that, right? Support the local small businesses who are creating those products that truly are natural and are not full of harsh chemicals, and you'll notice the difference, and, like, if you think if like, for me, I wash my hands a lot. I switched over to like a natural soap that they make, and I've noticed it's made from cacao, like it's a cacao based soap, and I can wash my hands as much as I want, but I don't experience that like weird cracking, right, when you wash your hands too much or something like that. So I think it's really just kind of getting exploratory. You can either make them on your own or even, just support the small businesses that are creating these natural products that are actually good for you. Um, because yeah, they need to be supported.
Feel witchy as well. Like I feel like when I'm making these things, I'm like reconnecting to my ancestors, feeling witchy. Like I've got good like medicine music going, and the oils. Like I'm like, like I'm like 5 years ago, my life was so different, and now I'm like in my kitchen, like with calendula and chamomile, and testing this and making that. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, very colorful one.
Yes, no, I love that, and it makes me think of yeah, no, I probably when I left San Francisco and I was working in tech, I never would have thought that, like, I would be walking in the mercado looking at the little, I'm blanking on the name, but you know how they have the stone bowls and they have the little grinders? What
The
is it
mortal
called?
and pestle.
Mhm, yeah, like, I've been eyeing them lately, and I'm like, "Okay, is it time to step up my brujeria?" Like because everything that you're saying, I've been kinda getting that urge lately of, like, is it time to start making my own, like, herbal teas or just, like, grinding up my herbs to do my thing, so, yeah, funny you say
Do it.
that.
My kitchen has, like, herbs hanging off the window, they're all drying. Yeah, do it, and I don't know, I feel like I don't know, that's such a beautiful and it's your energy as well that you're putting into these things now as opposed to something that's made in a laboratory and, I don't know, in Thailand somewhere and brought over to America, put a high label on it, and then brought over to you and, just having really good marketing behind it, no? That's at the end of the day, no? Because they say to you, like, you need a 10-step, skincare process. And you're like, no, it's actually going back to basics. And this is why when you look over your partner and he practically uses like dishwashing liquid on his face and he's got perfect skin, it's because they're minimal. They're not doing like 10 million things to it, no?
Mhm. Yes, I think I remember I don't know, this stuck with me, but I watched some, like, famous, like, celebrity makeup artist who, like, made a YouTube video, and she just said, "Your skin is a living, breathing organism." And she was basically like, "I don't know why everyone is walking around with full face makeup, like, if you don't have to, take care of your skin." And this is, like, a professional celebrity makeup artist saying, like, "When I don't need to wear makeup, like, I'm not wearing it because my skin needs to breathe, like, it's a living, breathing organism." So when you start to really see your, like, face like that, your skin like that, it really just changes the relationship I found for me of, like, "Well, yeah, I don't need to, like, wear makeup. I don't need to do this to fix this, you know? It's all about allowing my skin to have its natural process, just like I allow on the inside."
Don't you think it comes down, and I think there is a really a strong connection there between like acceptance, self-love, and just not caring anymore, no? Because when you are in the corporate world and you're running around, yeah, I had the high heels, the suits and the makeup and the really expensive perfume, no? And I don't know, like I'm so far removed from that now that I've accepted that, like I've got nothing on right now, no? And my skin has probably been the best it has been compared to when I was using, Clinique and all these other kind of products, no? But it comes down to a lot of self-love that you've had to work on, a lot of acceptance, and a lot of just like, okay, this is the kind of the path. And I think because I'm also following something that I really love, no? When you're
Yeah,
following that path of purpose, dharma, of what they call, no, is just like, I don't know, you're glowing kind of in a totally different way.
yeah, I would agree with you. I really do feel like in corporate, now that I reflect on it, it was more of a performance, right? And part of the performance were a costume. And so that's where the makeup comes in, the fancy outfits, the designer handbags, the perfume, the everything. But then once we really allow that performance to fall away and start living in our truth and being in our truth, we're a lot more comfortable, like same as you, like I'm not wearing any makeup, like this is genuinely what I naturally look like. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with not wearing makeup, being on video and being seen. Like, I guess I think that's really what it is there's a lot of self-acceptance and confidence of like, I am okay to be seen as I naturally am. Like, there's not really performance happening anymore.
Yeah, and what my maestro always said, like, you can't buy beauty in a bottle, and it's what the industry had told you, like, you buy this toner, this cleanser, this moisturizer, it's gonna give you confidence and beauty and whatever, and at the end, it's just like, yeah, no, you can't buy beauty in a bottle.
You can. Well, thank you so much for such a powerful, empowering conversation, especially around like just ancestral healing, reconnecting to your roots. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, what is the best way?
Yeah, so I'm more active on Facebook. I am old school. So you can come and connect with me, Amayra Morales. And I also run a private Facebook group, Ayurveda for Professional Women. So this is where I share recipes and tips and skincare and, herbal remedies. So yeah, if that's something that resonates with you, come and hang out with me.
Beautiful. I will make sure to drop all of your just information and links for your Facebook group in the show notes. So, yeah, I just want to say gracias one more time and just, yeah, signing off of this episode. This is your host, Marisol. I hope that you are enjoying roaming the now wherever you are in the world. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for catching this episode of Roaming the Now. If you have not already, make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, wherever you are in the world, I hope you are enjoying Roaming the Now.